staring at it. It's just we've no idea this is going to work.
Are you ready?
Okay, that's good. It's just hopefully, but I mean, you've briefed him about the need to have the live stream on and stuff so you can follow the meeting. Okay, so I mean, feel it might be worth, I know at some point we want to chat to him just to check he's all right, if you know what I mean, just so we don't get to the point and go to him and nothing happens. Thank you so much, Jordan. Looks like we're starting. Thanks so much.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning and Highways Committee today, the 16th of June. Please be aware that the Council is live streaming this meeting direct to our YouTube channel. While the physical venue of the meeting is different, we are endeavouring to keep to the usual meeting format as best as possible. There are, however, some key changes that I ought to highlight. Councillors looking to speak will be invited to do so by the Chair in the usual manner and will need to come up to their nearest microphone at the front to speak, unless you have a microphone on your table. Please do not touch the microphone wherever possible. For councillors that have table microphones, the sound technician will be unmuting your microphones when you are invited to speak. If councillors have any concerns about hearing or seeing others in the meeting, please let the Chair or the council officer know straight away. If anyone uses hearing aids, please make sure to connect to the hearing loop for the best audio quality. I must also run through a few key health and safety points for those physically in the meeting room. Face masks must be worn at all times except when you are speaking at the microphone or have medical exemption. The fire exits are via the main entrance and you enter the venue through or the disabled access entry point. The assembly point is out on West Down Road to the east of the building, and if you are able to, up towards the unmade section of Wilmington Road. In the venue, please limit your touching or shared surfaces as best possible, although I can confirm that the tables, chairs and other such surfaces and facilities have been cleaned ahead of the meeting. Please remain seated unless you are invited to speak or need to take a comfort break. Toilet facilities are at the main entrance doors. When moving around the room, please maintain your distance from others. I would also ask that participants looking to leave the meeting wait until the end of the agenda item to limit distractions for other participants. Voting will be done by the show of hands. Please be sure that making your hand is clearly lifted and keep it up until the Chair has called the vote. If the meeting goes into confidential session, a short 2-minute break will be held to all members of the public to leave and to stop the live stream feed. If members of the public present in person or via Zoom, members of the public are now invited to participate in one of 3 ways: remotely via Zoom, physically in the meeting, or by submitting a written statement to be read out. For those looking to speak specifically about the planning application on the agenda, you'll be invited to speak immediately before the committee considers the application. For those looking to speak on non-planning application business, you will be invited to speak during the public participation agenda item. Those members of the public looking to participate via Zoom will be invited to do so first at the relevant point of the agenda. Zoom users are reminded to keep yourself muted until you are invited to speak. The technical host will prompt when it is your turn to speak via the chat function, so please keep an eye on your Zoom chat function. Members of the public physically in the meeting room will be invited to speak next. Please raise your hand to show you wish to speak, and the Chair will invite you to come to the microphone in order. Again, please refrain from touching the microphone. Finally, a council officer will read aloud any written statements that have been submitted. Public participation is limited to a maximum of 4 minutes per person and must be relating to an item of business on the agenda. You do not need to state your name when you start speaking. If you do not wish to, but we ask that you clearly state which agenda item you are speaking about. To all present, please remember to show respect to others in the meeting and avoid interrupting where possible to enable others to follow the meeting. If any councillor feels concerned about any aspect of the meeting or discussion, please clearly state point of order. The chair will then gesture for you to elaborate. If anyone present is felt to be behaving unacceptably, they can be ejected from the meeting by resolution. Thank you for listening. On behalf of the council, I'd like to thank everyone for attending the town council meeting. Thank you for your patience. So we move on to the agenda items. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
There are no apologies, man. It's a full attendance, all 9 members are here.
Thank you. Item 2, disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure by members of any disclosable pecuniary interest and interests other than pecuniary interests as defined under the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and Localism Act 2011 in relation to matters on the agenda. None? Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Lord. Can you come to the microphone, please?
Thank you, Chair. It's only a quick one. It is in connection with item 4, the second one down, Dane Road. I actually know Mr. Moffat. Will that cause any problems?
If you haven't got a pecuniary interest...
No, at all. Just actually know him.
But we can just note that you...
Ignoring him.
You know the...
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. Agenda item 3, public participation. To deal with any questions or brief representations from members of the public in accordance with relevant legislation and Seaford Town Council policy. In accordance with the Town Council policy, members of the public wishing to speak on individual planning applications may do so immediately before each planning application. So any members of the public like to speak now on non-planning applications? No, thank you. So we move on to planning applications. I am going to ask the committee if you will agree that we move forward LW/21/02783 Homefield Road first. Are members agreeable to that? Yes? Thank you. So, LW/21/02783 Homefield Road, lower ground floor and first floor extension and demolition of the existing garage and boundary wall and construction of new garage and boundary wall. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Yes, would you like to come up to the microphone, please? And I stress that you have 4 minutes.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Committee. I am here with my husband this evening because I am extremely concerned that the proposals in this planning application would spoil the area we live in. Excuse me. The first thing you would notice when you walk into our road from Blatchington Hill is Easmore House. It is already the most dominating, imposing property on the road by far. These plans would turn Easmore into an overpowering, ostentatious house with turrets. This will be completely out of scale, the street scene will be disrupted, and it will hugely affect the established spacing between homes in our lovely neighbourhood. We also are concerned that these plans conflict with a number of planning policies set out in both Seaford Design Guidelines and the Lewis Local Plans Part 2. For example, GBO3 requires 2-storey extensions to be subservient to the main building and set back. This is clearly not the case here. It extends forward at the front wall and has a ridge height to match the existing building. While studying these plans and documents, we have found many anomalies, inaccurate statements, misleading measurements. Some I've already mentioned in our objection letter, but they are too many to list now, and I would use up my time allotted. This does call into question accuracy of the plans, measurements, and reports within this application. Looking at these proposals, we feel this is a totally unneighbourly extension, having effects on the lives of number 1, number 4, and importantly, number 5. The spacious character of properties in Homefield Road would change forever. May I finally quote page 25, General Design Guidelines for Seaford. Extensions or alterations that create an unacceptable sense of enclosure or appear overbearing when seen from neighbouring gardens or rooms should not be permitted. We hope you will agree and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening, councillors. I live immediately next door to the applicant address with my family, and we would be the most adversely affected by this proposed development. I've set out all my main concerns in a letter to the planning officer ahead of this meeting, and I'm grateful to all of you, as I know you will have considered them carefully. This planning application shows a fundamental lack of local understanding and sensitivity towards the character of Easmore House itself, towards the special area in Seaford it sits within, and to the neighbours and properties most directly affected. The owners of Easmore House have declined invitations to come into our property and see for themselves exactly how their plans in their current form would affect us. This is unfortunate because just about the first thing anyone notices when they walk out into our lovely rear garden is their home, Easmore House, as we have a particularly fine view of it from there. This impressive house dominates our western skyline. But the plans to extend the house more than 6 metres further towards us will turn an already imposing home into an overbearing one. The sheer massing of Easmore, amplified by the height and depth differences, along with the slope at the back, will make the overall impact intolerable for us. Added to this are some particularly unpleasant design features which contribute to a feeling of being continuously overlooked, namely the number of new windows to the side and the turrets and balcony projecting at the front and back. These structures, located where they are fundamentally obtrusive, oppressive and unneighbourly. The promise of obscure glass gives us no real guarantee of privacy. Finally, I do understand that the owners have bought a house which doesn't yet suit their needs and wish to make it bigger, and it's their right to do so. But this set of proposals in its current form just has too many negative impacts on Easmore House itself, on the quality and enjoyment of our lives, and the character of the area that we live in. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else like to speak on this application? No? Do we invite Mr. Arnold?
An additional...
Yeah, okay.
I've
We have received a notice.
received today, sorry madam, a letter from the neighbour on the other side from number 5, at number 1, the Star House, Homefield Road. He is...
I've received today, sorry madam, a letter from
He's a bit late with his objection. He hasn't got a computer, and he's submitted a long written objection which he delivered today. It covers a lot of the points that have been covered already, but his particular concern is about the Flint boundary wall, which boundary wall close to the East Blatchington Conservation Area, which bounds his property, which needs to be protected. A lot of his letter is taken up with that. And it goes on to talk about the parking at the front of Eastmoor House, which will be removed by the extension, and that will exacerbate parking problems in the road, especially during the school run. There are some plans, a diagram which he's submitted to illustrate some of the problems. Going through, there's about 10 pages, so as I say, I have to summarise to a certain extent, but I think those are the main concerns. The demolition of the Flint wall and the reduction in size of the parking area at the front, which will exacerbate traffic conditions in the area. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we have received an enormous amount of letters on this application. I think we can now go over to the applicant now. Yes, we have received an enormous amount of letters on this application. I think we can now go over to the applicant now.
Good evening, councillors. Am I heard?
Yes, we have received an enormous amount of letters on this application. I think we can now go over to the applicant now.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Good evening, councillors. Am I heard? Following the public notice of application, as you would expect, I've kept a watchful eye on the Lewes District Council portal and the public objections. And I assume that many of you actually are expecting me to counter-argue these objections today, or at least have my say. I've made the decision not to do that today. I feel that the line between what is essentially a planning objection and things becoming more personal has become very thin, to say the least. And in the interest of my family and having a healthy relationship with my neighbours in the future, this is not a path I want to go down. My neighbours and the community are, of course, entitled to their opinions, and they should be respected. I would, however, kindly urge councillors to be mindful of the facts and professional opinions that I have produced in this application above and beyond what is usually expected. These include, but are not limited to, the geotechnical report, the daylight scope report, the construction environment management report, the arboricultural report, the heritage statement, and the additional planning statement by my architect. What I would like to do this evening, if I may, within my 4 minutes, is to give you a little insight as to my intentions and my approach. I'm going to read you a letter that I wrote to all of the neighbours on the 11th of April after the withdrawal of my initial application. I write to you following my letter and subsequent planning application withdrawal on the 22nd of March. I've spent much of the last couple of weeks consulting with neighbours, members of the community, architects and various professional bodies to ensure that resubmission of my planning application and supporting documents will provide more detailed drawings as well as alterations and further plans regarding the front boundary wall and garage. Please find enclosed the amended drawings prior to my submission to LDC. I have also enclosed an artist's impression of my plans from two different aspects. Please note that the artist was commissioned prior to decision to change the front wall and move the garage. Unfortunately, given the circumstances of the past year, there has been little opportunity to get to know many of you. I can only hope that this is soon in change as the lives start to resemble some sort of normality. Firstly, I would like to state how incredibly blessed Sarah and I feel to be able to raise our family in such a beautiful property in such an idyllic part of town. We are not Seaford newcomers. We have lived around the corner since 2016, and we've been fascinated by this house ever since. But the truth be told, and despite everything we love about it, the house does not function in the way we want it to at present. And the potential to extend the property was always discussed, was a discussion that was had from the very first viewing. I do not feel the need to justify my reasons for development, but I think it's fair to say that the needs, desires of a modern day family are different to that of a family in 1903 when the property was first built. First and foremost, Easmore House is a family home, and it's important that it remains a family home for generations to come. It is equally important that any plans to extend are respectful to the original design and heritage of the property. There are obviously some neighbours affected by the proposed plans more than others, and although I cannot mitigate all disruption, these plans have been carefully designed, taking into account any adverse effects on neighbouring properties. Getting the right balance between achieving the objective of the build, that is understanding and respectful to neighbours' space and privacy, has not been easy, but having sought consultation and listened to concerns within the community, we feel that these plans are fair, proportionate, and complementary to the existing building and community. Lastly, I think it's important to know that whatever your feelings or views may be, and whether I agree with them or not, I will always be respectful of them. I can only hope that there will be no personal grudges held throughout or after this process, as there will certainly not on our part. We hope to live and raise our fast-growing family in this house for a long time, and being part of the community is something that is very important to us. Please do feel free to contact me at any time if there's anything you wish to discuss or like further clarification on. My door is always open.
Thank you. Right, I now open it to the committee. Who would like to lead?
Can you hear me? The answer is
Councillor
my
Bourne.
door is always open.
Thank you, Chair. A few things. In the design statement for the applicant, he said all features have taken account of the history and style of the building. This is an Edwardian building. Turrets are not part of the Edwardian era, so he's not in keeping with the history or style of the building. This goes against GB02, Seaford Neighbourhood Plan, and GB03, where it says roof pitches should reflect the host building. Well, turrets are nowhere in the original building, so they do not reflect it. And GB03, with extensions, can have greater dominance, so greater care has to be taken to assimilate well with the host building and the street scene. Well, to create turrets in a building that shouldn't have turrets in, then that isn't assimilating with the host building or taking into consideration the street scene. At the moment, that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you. Councillor Lord.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, councillors. Yes, I've actually met the residents in and around this particular property. I've been in the rear garden of the property, which is directly affected by the extension. Excuse me. To see it simply on a drawing really doesn't give you the impression of the size and bulk of this extension. It is huge. The extension extends so much along the actual Homefield Road. It's almost like another property, and it then heads its way south. It is unbelievably large. Because it follows the same contour as the pitch of the existing property, it is where the next door neighbours is. It happens to fall where the under basement falls, which acts nicely as a basic street level, DPC level, and the extension fits on top of it. The drawings you've got do not represent the size, the bulk, and the character. I have to say, Madam Chair, this extension is an absolute wonderful piece of architecture, art and design. However, I do strongly feel it is on the right property, it is in the wrong location. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillors.
Councillor Everton.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say to the applicant, it is nice to hear someone speak so highly of the town and how much they want to live and raise their family here. We do appreciate that. However, I've also been to the neighbouring property's garden, and because, as Councillor Lord says, because it slopes away slightly, if you're at the back, this will actually visually be almost a 3-storey extension from their back garden. It's extremely imposing, very close to their fence line. I'm also a little bit concerned that there are at least 2 really beautifully well-established trees there that are of a considerable age. And with the basement being dug right close to that fence line, their roots will be cut through. And I think that that could cause a lot of damage to those trees, if not finish them off. And also we do consider the light issue, and this extension is so large, and it doesn't impact the homeowner's property really, because they're putting it in a strip of land that they've got between them and the neighbour's house, but actually will have a big impact on their house, because in certain parts of their land it will look like a 3-storey extension. It's very close to their fence line, will block out light for them. So these are concerns I have, and also with Star House being on the other side, that is a property of some considerable historic value, and having this next to it, I think, diminishes that, and it changes the visual aspect of the street with the closing of the gap between those 2 houses, because all the other houses are spaced out evenly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Overton. Councillor Meek.
Thank you, Chair. I've also been to visit the garden of number 5 Homefield Road, and I can corroborate what the previous councillors have said. I also agree with Councillor Borman about the turrets. I think they're out of keeping. I think we ought to bear in mind the actual policies that we are obliged to follow, which are that, on the one hand, extensions of this size call into question whether they are in fact subservient to the house, the main house, or not, or whether actually they take precedence over the original house by dwarfing it. That is something which we really need to adhere to. I think it's a very pertinent case that some of the objectors have raised, which is that the turret feature in actual fact stands forward of the front line of the house, which actually is a regulation that we are not allowed to follow. It has to stand back from, I believe. I'd like our planning officer to corroborate that for us. I understand it should step back from the roadway frontage of the house. I would suggest that the idea of an extension on that side per se is not a bad one, but I do think it goes too close to the neighbour's fence. I would suggest that we should reject this planning application, and I think we should suggest to the applicant that the 2 first floor wings which go towards the neighbour's property, which contain the turrets, should be discounted and should be on ground floor level, because from the street scene that would mitigate against the overdevelopment visual aspect of that building, and it would also stop the building being overbearing to the neighbour in their garden. That would be my suggestion, but I'll obviously leave it to councillors to judge. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Meek. Does anybody else like to comment on this application? So,
Mention something.
yes.
As the overall view appears to be against the application, so just a few comments to help sort of guide you, particularly in matters that have been raised about the design guidelines of the neighbourhood plan and the local plan. I think it was Mrs. Baker that mentioned the local plan and the neighbourhood plan, and in cases like this, they should be the sort of starting point for consideration of any objections. The design guidelines do mention about the extensions being subservient to the main property, and in particular also guideline GBO3 does mention about the impact of windows inside and the side of the extensions as well. But also in the design guidelines there are specific guidelines on each area, a character area of Seaford. This property is in Seaford West as far as the design guidelines are concerned, and there's a general guideline there that new developments should be sympathetic to the existing style of the locality. And that sort of guideline is sort of echoed in the local plan, which I've just lost. The policy DM28 of the local plan, which was also referred to by Mrs. Baker early on in the submissions, that extensions is headed residential extensions. Extensions should be sympathetic to the style and character of the locality, especially where that locality has some sort of architectural quality. And although this area is not in a conservation area and it's not an area of established character, it adjoins a conservation area, and I think it has to be acknowledged as an area with some special architectural character, albeit not designated as such in the local plan or neighbourhood plan. And that policy DM28 also states that extensions should not have any adverse impact on the privacy of neighbouring properties through overlooking, etc. And I think it's already been mentioned, a concern is the number of windows in the property overlooking or facing the garden of number 5, and the impact, the general impact of the extension on number 5 has been referred to. So I think, as I say, the starting point for opposing, if you like, applications are policies if they are relevant to the application. And I think those policies I've mentioned, if an objection is proposed and seconded and carried, should be referred to in the response.
Thank you. Is any more comments on this application? So can I have a proposer? Councillor Payne, would you like to speak on it? No. Just you're going to... And just find a seconder. Thank you. And we're proposing to object to this application, that it's not in keeping, size and bulk, overbearing to number 5, out of keeping, and then it...
Negative impact on the conservation area adjoining as well, and on the street scene that you mentioned. Yeah.
And then goes against the policies of the neighbourhood plan and the local plan. Yeah?
Yes.
You agreed to that, Councillor Payne? Yeah, yeah. So can I have a show of hands of objecting to this application?
It's carried unanimously, so objection will be submitted.
Thank you. So the committee has objected to this planning application. You're all quite welcome to stay throughout the meeting, but if you'd like to leave at this point, you're most welcome to. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Right, we move on to planning applications received week commencing 17th of May. LW/21/0235, 70 Saltwood Road. Creation of a rear two-storey and a single-storey extension. Sorry. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? So it's open to the committee. Who would like to lead on this one? Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this property is on a corner of Rye Close and there's more than enough room for the extension, so I'm quite happy to support the application.
Thank you. Councillor Lord. Thank you, Councillor Lord. Any other comments? So can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favour.
Thank you. Those against? Abstaining? No.
That's supported.
Right. Thank you. LW/21/0269, Dane Road, change of use of dwelling house to 9-bedroom HMO residence. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? I noticed online there were 15 letters referring to this application. So open to the committee. Who would like to lead on this application? Councillor Payne.
Yes, I read through all the letters and I agree with certainly with the parking aspect and the noise aspect to a certain extent. That I think it wouldn't really be a good thing to have that in that area for 9 bed sits. But maybe they could redo it because somebody did suggest reducing it to 5 or something like that. And I think that would be more acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. In principle, we do need this smaller, more affordable accommodation in the town. That people haven't got places to live. Couples just setting up on themselves. Bedsits are the ideal thing. This is what we had when we were younger. So in principle, I do agree with it. But I do have 2 issues. Firstly is the parking. Yes, I know we're trying to encourage people to cycle and use public transport, and it is close to the town for public transport. But there is only 2 parking spaces, and there is 1 set of 4 bike racks for 4 bicycles only. That's not enough for 9 flats with 16 people. Secondly is the refuse. They've said in their application that the refuse bins are going down the side of the house. But it's a very narrow walkway, so you're not going to be able to get large bins in there. So it's going to be the normal household bins. For 9 flats and your recycling bins, there won't be enough room for it all. So both these issues actually go against Lewis's local plan, DM8, for parking and the not enough refuse sites. So I'd like to object to it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments?
I'm glad Councillor Bullman referred to DM8 because I was just going to explain the details because it is directly relevant to this application. It covers residential subdivisions and it lays out criteria for applying to new applications for houses of multiple occupation. And it says that the following criteria should be met, and I'll summarise it. Adequate provision for car parking, private amenity space for residents, storage of bicycles, recycling refuse containers. 2, the proposal would not result in unacceptable harm to the amenities of neighbouring residents through loss of privacy, noise or disturbance. 3, no adverse impact on the character of the immediate locality through the cumulative impact of physical alterations or extensions. Well, there aren't any physical alterations or extensions, but as has been said, 9 bed sits is a rather intensive use of this property. I mean, the adjoining property, I think, is split into 3 flats, which is the sort of usually the acceptable level of intensity of use. So, as I say, there is a specific policy on residential subdivisions on houses of multiple occupation, as Councillor Borman has referred to, and it does refer specifically to the issues that she's raised. So those criteria will have to be considered when you come to your decision on the application.
Thank you. I did notice what did come online today is that East Sussex Highways are not showing any objection to the application, but they are stipulating as one of the to have a cycle shed up to house 9 bicycles. So even takes more room away from the car parking. So does Councillor Honeyman?
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible to suggest a number, like 6 bed sits? Can we do that, or can we, if we do object to this or not support it effectively, we can, however, we can, if it was a reduced number, I don't know if that's possible in any deliberation.
You can suggest that if you consider that the current proposals don't fit those criteria, you could suggest that a lesser number of bed sits, the use will be over intensive, and that a lesser number of bed sits may then comply with the criteria of the relevant policy. Because I think you've got to go really, you've got to be guided by the policy. And as Councillor Borman has said, it's a useful level of accommodation. It's just, it could be said in this case to be so intensive that it comes outside the policy. So it's up to you, but if you want to propose that, that would be a feasible response, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Meek.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just comment that it does seem to me that I know they're only studio flats, but they are pretty small. I mean, there's very little utility space in there. Once you've got a double bed, you've hardly got any room to do anything. There's hardly any, three of the flats have hardly any space apart from the sink, and the toilet facilities are tiny. There's not even a wash hand basin. So I just think it's compromised too much for decent living for people. And I think somebody is possibly trying to screw in as much money out of as they can. And I would suggest that if it was, I agree, that if we could downgrade it to, say, 6, you could have 2 flats on each floor, which would be much more spacious and convenient for people, and you wouldn't have such an intensity of dwelling for usage. No, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Borman, would you be happy for that to be added to your objection? So does Councillor Borman find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Everton. And can I have a show of hands of refusing this application on the parking and refuse and to the policy of local plan DM8?
Yeah, the intensity of the fact that there are 9 units. Yeah.
Okay. So can I have a show of hands, please?
Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
So I mentioned in the response that the lesser number possibly being suitable.
Yeah. Right, where are we? Dane Road. Planning applications received week commencing the 24th of May. LW/21/02223, 3 Harbourview Close, Bishopstone. Side extension, increased dormer width to rear, 2 dormers to the front and front roof lights. Any members of the public like to comment? Yes, sir. Can you come up to the microphone, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, councillors. If you thought Easmore was close to the boundary, you should see this one. The situation is that number 3 is the right hand of a pair of semi-detached bungalows, and number 4, who I represent, Mrs. Valerie Rumble in the green, is the left-hand side of a pair. Number 3 and number 4 are separated by a twin garage, constructed as a single unit. Okay? So separated by a single skin breeze wall. The drawings as presented show the extension goes right up to the boundary. The drawings as presented also show the change in level between the floor of the bungalow number 3 and the floor of the garage of number 3, which is the left hand of this twin garage. In order to construct a 2-storey side extension up to the boundary, they will have to run effectively a buzzsaw through every single of the roof timbers. They would have to support the garage of number 4. They would have to cut the floor slab of the garage of number 3. They would then have to dig at least 1.5 metres down for the foundations, as well as the excess in order to get down to a level floor area, which significantly undermines the integrity of the garage and therefore imperils Mrs. Rumble's property. The application was submitted in March, validated in May. Mrs. Rumble has not had any discussion whatsoever on the party wall agreement implications of this. And so from a technical point of view, it is not possible for me to envisage how this can be built without adversely affecting Mrs. Rumble's property. Okay? In addition, the garage sits back from the building line of the 2 bungalows, and the proposal is to build the extension out to the front. And so it's not only undermining, if you like, the integrity of her garage, but also the garage forecourt, because of the need to excavate in order to provide the decent footings, not only for the extension, but also to reinstate the footings required to underpin what will be her flank wall. Also, it is incredibly difficult to build a wall when it's butted up against a breeze block extension. So how you construct it, I don't know. But as I say, the applicant has not had the decency to talk to Mrs. Rumble about this, and so we are in the dark as to what the proposals are. But as someone who has been in the profession of providing housing for over 40 years, I find that rather difficult to see how that will work. That's the details of the site. I want to point out several other matters as well. And I will be quick. All these points were lodged on the LDC website on the 3rd of June, and so the points are made there, and I believe a number of councillors have already been advised of them. But there are a number of precedents that are being broken by this proposal of a side extension. The first is there ain't any on the whole estate. If you Google Earth it, you can see it for yourselves. The second is that any rooms in the roofs in these bungalows are lit by Velux windows, not by dormers. In nowhere else on the estate is a dormer proposed with a French window leading out onto a balcony overlooking a harbour. So it's unprecedented in terms of proximity to the boundary. It's unprecedented in terms of access to a view from the front elevation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anybody else like to speak on this application? So I open it to the committee. Oh, yes, sir.
Hi, Madam Chair. I live at number 33 Hurdis Road, and I speak for my neighbours as well who live at number 35. We face the back of their property. The proposed extension would create serious privacy issues for both myself and my neighbour. They'd be able to look straight into our lounge and dining areas. As Charlie just said, it would be unprecedented, the extension with the dormers in the front of the property. And there isn't anywhere on the estate where that is, in place. That's all I wish to say.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? No. Yes, madam?
Basically we live at 35 and it's the same as Paul. They can see straight into our house and it's not in keeping with the rest of the estate either. And that's really it, really. Okay, thank you.
Right, now I opened it to the committee. Who would like to lead on this application? Councillor Meek.
Application on the grounds that have been submitted, particularly the cogent lack of information about how it would ever be built anyway, and you can't build right on the boundary line. So I think it's really out of keeping and unsupportable by us, I think, really, at this stage.
We can refer to the neighbourhood plan policy of GB 04 and 3.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just going to mention that.
Yes.
So in a way, although it's a very much different application, there are similar principles apply here as to the 3 Homefield Road application, in that although it's a completely different style of architecture and the layout of the estate and everything, it does have a certain uniformity and style which, as the objectors have said, would be upset by the installation of a front dormer and the side extension as well, having an impact on the amenity of the 2 residents at the rear. So yes, the same design guidelines apply, GB 03 and 04, the neighbourhood plan, tied up with the local plan residential extensions DM 28, which is like a general the general policy relating to residential extensions having to fit into the street scene. And there is a definite pattern of development here in the area, which was intended by the person who laid it out, which will be upset by the proposals. So it's something that can be referred to in our response if an objection is decided on.
Thank you.
It will strengthen the response.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Edson. Councillor Bournemouth.
agreement. We've had applications, I think about a year ago, where someone wanted to take down their half of the garage, and there was an agreement between the neighbours prior to the application going in, which made it so much easier for us to support the application at the time because they were in agreement. Also, it goes against SW01, where development should respect existing scale, height and the surrounding area. And I did see back in 2007 that an application was made for 2 front dormers, and that was refused as it would be out of keeping, detrimental to the character and appearance of the locality, and it's exactly the same today. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to comment on this. So, I mean, living on the estate, and I've known the estate since it was built in the middle 60s, and wherever you look on the newer part of the estate, there are no dormer windows at the front of the properties. Yes, they have crept in on the rear of the properties, but the estate was named Harbour View Estate, and it was the designers at the time was that every dwelling would have some form of view of the harbour, hence its name. Either it was from their property or from their gardens. So, yes, I do object to this application on the grounds which have already been mentioned. Thank you. So, we have a proposal from Councillor Meek that we refuse this application on overdevelopment, was it? Sorry.
Yes, the effect on the uniformity and the street scene in the locality of the front dormer, and the side extension, the effect on the amenities of the 2 properties at the rear, and the fact that it's against the guidelines, the named guidelines of the neighbourhood plan and the local plan policy DM28 regarding residential extensions fitting into the style of and character of the area that they're situated in.
Thank you.
Something on.
That's fine by you, Councillor Meek, yes. And seconded by, Councillor Edson. And can I have a show of hands, please, of objecting to this application?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's objection unanimous.
Thank you. As I've said earlier, if anybody wants to leave now, you can, but you're most welcome to stay. So thank you for coming. Right, we move on to planning applications received Monday the 31st of May. LW/21/0309 23 Horth Hill. Proposal demolition of the existing garage and replacement with a side addition containing a room in the roof. As there's no members of the public left, I open it to the committee. Who would like to lead on this one? Councillor Foreman.
Thank you, Chair. The stepped nature of the property, it's the next door neighbours which is lower than theirs. So when they then build an extension, it's not subservient because it's now taller, it's now overpowering the whole building, which actually goes against GBO3. And it's not in keeping with the area. There's only a couple of houses down that estate which one house is lower than the other, and it don't have a 3-tiered system. If it's going to be an extension, it should be level with their roof ridge, not towering above it. So I would like to object to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foreman. Anybody? Councillor Everton? Thank you. Any other comments? So we got a proposal by Councillor Foreman that we object to this application, as it's not in keeping with neighbouring properties and goes against the neighbourhood plan GB3. So can I have a show of hands of objecting?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's unanimous objection.
Thank you. LW/21/0251 Seaford Football Club, Bramber Road. Infill existing entrance door and replace with new wider entrance doors with ramp to improve accessibility. Installation of kitchen extractor with ventilation duct, size to be confirmed, subject to specialist design. And COVID-19 compliant outside seating. Who would like? Councillor Everton.
Yeah, I'd like to support this. I think that the football club are clearly trying to improve their facilities, and it's actually what they need to do, particularly in the kitchen, and that it's actually needed. The building needs some renovation and some fixing up a bit, and also making more better use of it, because they're hoping to have, you know, when COVID ends, they're hoping that it becomes really popular, and it's been done quite sympathetically what they're asking to do, so I'm happy to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Lord. Thank you, Councillor Lord.
I think any comments that do go forward, obviously, will be planning comments from the planning committee, but should also be accompanied by a mention that the council are actually the landlords of the football club, just to make it clear to the district council when the response is considered that although we've looked at it from a planning point of view, they need to know that we are also, or the town council is also the head landlord, or the head leaseholder, freeholder. Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments? So can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
That's carried unanimously.
Thank
supported.
you. LW/21/0242 Seaford Head School, Arundel Road. Who would like to lead on this application? Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. We know the infrastructure of schools is always a bone of contention in every town, and it's nice to see that Seaford Head are actually looking to the future, resubmitting their application for a larger building because they can see their future needs. So it's great that, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Everton, you seconding? Any other comments? And can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
That's supported unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. LW/21/0293 13 Deal Avenue. As there were no plans on the website, we're deferring this to the next meeting.
The case officer has apologised for the fact that the plans weren't posted, and is obviously happy for us to deal with it on the 7th of July. And he's going to get the plans posted on site as soon as possible, on the website, that is. James Emery is one that, you know, is quite responsive. Not that the others aren't.
Okay, moving on to LW/ oh no, we've done that one, so sorry. Moving on to LW/21/0230 83 Stafford Road. Retrospective application for erection of a balcony on top of a previously approved single-storey rear extension. Anybody like to comment on this application? Councillor Borman? All good exercise.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, I don't like retrospective applications, but none of the neighbours seem to object, and it seems to fit in well. It's not overlooking or anything, so I'm actually happy to support this one.
Thank you, Councillor Boardman. Let's find a seconder. Councillor Payne. Any comment? No? Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? No? So can I have a show of hands for supporting this application?
That's supported unanimously, thank you.
Moving on to the Tree Works application, TW/21/0031/TPO 5 Barn Close. Any comments on this application? Councillor Lord?
Thank you, Chair. I've had a look at this one. I actually received an email from something separate but relating to this, what my opinion were on trees in Seaford. Anyway, but it actually relates very close to this. They're doing the pollarding on the trees because they're not being maintained. My little thing, Jeff, something about just banging me drum. They should say how much pollarding it is. It should give a percentage of the pollarding. It should say tree uplift, tree downlift, or a pollarding of the tree, say 30%, something like that. And it should also stipulate in the actual documentation that no work will be carried out until after the bird nesting season. And just going straightforward saying we're going to do it gives the arboriculturists, they think, okay, we'll just go ahead and do it. So I think really we need the percentage uplift or the percent uplift or crown topping, and also the amount of pollarding we're going to carry out on the property. Along with that, nothing we carry in the bird nesting season. Other than that, it's a straightforward application. I do support it. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I quite agree. We need to know how much is being taken off. I did see that it's 8 years since the last time that they applied, so there will be a lot of growth, but how much are they taking off? Also, I noted on both this application and the one back in 2013, it says that the T16 ash tree is no longer there. Why? Can we ask why it hasn't been replaced or what's happened to it? Because obviously it's got a tree preservation order on it, and if it's no longer there, then what have they done with it? So, but I'm happy to second Councillor Lord.
Councillor Lord, do you want to elaborate on that?
Through work, it's a very, very quick one. What's happening basically is that the tree, if it's an ash dieback, we allow it to die on the hope that it's actually done, put some seedlings down for saplings, because what we found, the new saplings are becoming now ash resistant. So it's left for 2 or 3 years to see if there's any saplings coming through. If they are, 9 times out of 10, the saplings are actually resistant to ash dieback. So we're encouraging things to grow before we start ripping the roots out and everything else and planting new trees. Technically, if it's died back naturally, there's no reason why we've got to replant. It's when we take things down mechanically, we're obliged to put at least 1, 2 or 3 trees back. So it's a bit of a grey area, but that's how it stands at the present moment in time. We're changing throughout the year as well, Councillor Bourne. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. Councillor Mead.
Chair, I just wonder if we could have an update as to when we will be getting advice about tree works from LDC tree officers, because we're not being given really much help with making these decisions, and as we're struggling to know what to do when we're not arboriculturists or anything like that. So do we know anything further about when we might get some advice from?
I think Daniel Wynne, who is the experienced tree officer that we'd had training with before, I think he's retired. His name hasn't appeared on applications that I've been notified about in the last few months. So, when the time's right to enable us to invite officers over to give training sessions, then I think the tree session will be at the top of the list because it is very useful. So, but I'll see who is now responsible for arboricultural work in the council, and then, as I say, it'll be some time before we can all get together for a training session, probably. Maybe quite soon, but probably not at the moment. So, but I'll obviously bear that in mind and try and set something up, because we haven't had any training during the lockdown, and we usually have at least 2 or 3 training sessions a year. So yeah, we do need to catch up a bit. And that goes generally across the council, really. Catch up once all the restrictions are lifted.
Can you speak through the chair, please?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, if you don't mind. It's only a very, very quick one with regards to ash dieback. I went on a course, and the example they give is a typical example of ash dieback is when you travel from Seaford on the course road, and you get to the course road and you drop down to Seaford next to St Bede's College. On your right-hand side, all the trees have been cut down. Well, what happened after the Great Storm in '87, the powers that be, that's the Eastbourne Borough Council, decided to let the actual embankment self-seed as a self-seeding location for ash, and just leave it as it is. Rather than try and manage it, we'll just leave it as it is. And as a consequence of that, 40 odd years later, a disease got into it, and it's ravaged the actual entire ash in that area, and that's why all the trees have been cut back. And they've cut them all back, and they said, what we're going to do, we're going to leave it now for 5 years at least, if any little whips come up, to see if they've actually grown through. And so it's been carefully monitored, but we don't know what's going to happen next. And it gives you an example of that. We left it to nature, and unfortunately nature wasn't strong enough to fight the ash dieback. So that's why we are where we are with things. So, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. Okay, we haven't voted on this, have we? I've lost track now.
I think is there a proposal that we support the application provided the percentage uplift is appropriate and acceptable, and that the work is done outside the nesting season?
Yes, and that was proposed by Councillor Lord and seconded by Councillor Borman. Yeah. So can I have a show of hands, please?
That's supported unanimously, +1.
Thank you. We have, as you can see on your agenda, we haven't got an update report for this meeting, so I draw the meeting to a close at 8:15.
Nice round.
So thank you everybody for coming, and safe journey home.
Thank you.